Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Debora Gemmell. Mrs. Deborah, how are you doing, ma?
I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. And also, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity, Mrs. Deborah. Firstly, you are a leadership, life, and also a business coach. Can you please, Mrs. Deborah, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Deborah?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And a little bit about me, I had a 30 plus year corporate career in the movie, sports, and entertainment industry. And during that process, I had started doing personal development work on myself actually in my mid 20s. A lot of trauma from growing up years. And so I've pretty much been in working on evolving myself and rising myself up to higher levels since my 20s. I am now 61 this month. So it's been a wonderful lifetime of learning and growth. And following my corporate career, I had already trained to be a coach. I had already been mentoring people throughout my younger development years. But in 2019, I was very gratefully packaged out of my job and handed money. And my business mentor at that time said to me, Deb, you've just been handed a gift. Clearly, you were meant to go and help people. So take the money and go do your thing. And so 2 days later, I went and got a booth at a business function here in Toronto. And I met the Toronto police. And I also met my first corporate client, who to this very day is still a client of mine. And he has also referred me to probably 20 people. And that is sort of how my business blossomed. And in life, sometimes something happens and you just realize that this is what you're meant to do, and everything is rising up to let you know that you are definitely on the right path. That was that day.
Very beautiful, and that shows the beauty of sometimes life happens, and when this life
Yes.
happens, what can come out of it is the most important thing. That is why we have to try our best as humans to continue to embrace life. In the last 20 or 25 years, you never had the imagination to be a coach under leadership and also business as well. But when things happen, then that gave us the path through to make us realize one of the reasons why we are on earth. And that's what also motivates you to bring out this profound book, which I would like to drive to Me, My Thoughts, and I. Can you please, Mrs. Deborah, discuss more on the book? And do you also plan to write more books in the coming future, Mrs. Deborah?
Yes. So I became a coach when I was 58 years old. So that in itself is interesting. Became an entrepreneur for the first time at the age of 58. In my corporate career, my bosses used to joke that I was an entrepreneur who got a paycheck because I sort of always had the spirit, but never the courage. And so through my coaching, so I've been coaching actively since 2017, and but formally started my full time business in 2020. And so I've coached people around the world from South Africa, across Europe, across Canada, across the US. And the one thing that I've seen is repetition is one of the greatest powers we have when we want to transform our lives and our habits and our living patterns. And so one of the things I saw that I have some clients I've been coaching 3 or 4 years. Other people come in for 6 months. It just depends on whatever they want to work on. But one of the things I saw was that um, people would benefit from having tools to use outside of the coaching space. So I always give homework in all of my coaching sessions because it's the magic's not in the coaching session. They'll get insights, but it's what they're going to do outside in the days in between their coaching sessions that the most power. So I started to have this idea that I could create a book that was a collection of different tools that my clients used. I've taught them all of these different tools. I asked my clients what their favorite tools were that they've learned in coaching. And so the book became a collection of all these different tools. And really, it's something to carry around with you always to use. So in the back, I put an alphabetical A to Z listing of all the different topics. And so on a particular day, if you're feeling anxious, you can go look up anxious and go read the pages pertaining to anxiety. If you're feeling you're taking something personally that somebody said, or you're upset about something, you can go look up quit taking it personal and go read that. So it's really meant to be a living tool for people to carry with them every day of their life to help keep them on track. Because our thinking and our chatter and our inner critic wants to always jump in there and take us down the road we don't want to go. And so I created this book as hopefully a tool that will help people kind of keep themselves on track.
Mrs. Deborah, you're one of the person that can be of an example to others that it is always never too late. Who will believe that at 50 plus, you will begin something that is more profound and also inspiring as well, that impacts a lot of people's life today. You've decided to become a coach in your 50s time, even wrote a book as well, regards to those perspective. And with that experience you've had, you've used it to also inspire others and also make people to also research themselves by giving them their own work. Homework is very important to go out there and also make themselves to be known and also learn from their own perspective as well. And that is why I would also like to dive from self-doubt, which is in regards to your book, Mrs. Deborah. A lot of people are all capable of struggling with self-doubt. Self-doubt is one of the things that they are really, really in the position whereby they are afraid to make a certain decisions. How do you think the listeners can try their best to recognize when their inner critic is loud but not truthful along the way, Mrs. Deborah?
Yes, so I mean, it's a much bigger conversation around that. It's a big topic. But what I would say is that the problem actually isn't self doubt, the problem is self image. It is how we see ourselves. That how we see ourselves triggers the critic. Or if we see ourselves, people who have done this coaching work, myself on many more days than before. I'm never going to be perfect. I'm always going to be a work in progress, but I get to enjoy many more days because my inner critic no longer runs the show. I have done work as I do with myself and my clients on improving our self image, how we perceive ourselves. That is at the very foundation. I spent many years living in anxiety and fear and doubt and paralyzed, and not doing a whole lot, just living in a very small box, using my job performance and job accolades and good performance to try to make some false sense of self esteem. And I literally spent 30 years doing that. I was very good at what I did in my job, but I didn't believe that I was good. I only did it enough to manage the anxiety and the inner critic that I had to keep it enough at bay or in the box that I could function. Literally, it's exactly what I did. I didn't know anything about what my judgments were or anything. I didn't understand. They just felt part of me, like my arm or my leg. And now, as a coach and through my own work and everybody I've coached, we create space between that inner critic and ourselves. We start to see the truth, not the facts, but the truth that who we truly are is rock solid. It's these narratives and stories and perceptions that we created about ourselves that cause the problem. And the most important thing that I tell my clients is a lot of the narrative that we have about ourselves, the self doubt, actually isn't ours. We've inherited it from our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents. So we not only adopt what our families look like and our personalities and our voices, we also adopt the inner system. So when we're small children and we're in these environments, I happen to be someone that grew up in an active alcoholic home. I took in all of that. And as babies, we have no choice. We have no ability to filter, no ability to choose or select what comes in or what doesn't come in. And of course, my parents came from their own environment. So it's really, really important for people to recognize that a lot of the inner criticism and self doubt that they have has been generational and passed down. And they can be the person that stops that pattern and starts changing it so that they pass on new, healthier behaviors.
Hmm. You said one of the most important things, Mrs. Deborah, image. It goes back to our self image. We do have self doubt. We do have times that we have to choose tough, make tough decisions. But most of the time, it always comes back to our self image. How do we see ourselves? How do we give the sense of reflection? Who do we think we are? And how do we think we want to be seen around? Those things are one of the most important things we have to check on if we're having some serious self doubt. And you also make a very huge and profound insight as well. A lot of people do not really know that our past or our generation or the family we come from really make a very huge impact on how we actually respond to life at times. And we have to also check on those certain patterns. When we check from our family background as well, we realize that there are some patterns from through the generation and from their ancestral time that really do occur repeatedly. We should be a person that could be a source to make it more better and more stronger. But it is always really very tough because we are now trying to break a cycle that has been existing a long time ago. And I also like to drive to the point of self-criticism, Mrs. Deborah. When a person have a very huge self-doubt, there is also a source of a point whereby a person can have self-criticism. What will people say about me? How people see me? If I take these decisions, what will people say that I need to do or I do not do well? So, what do you think are some of the gentle ways listeners can try to respond to self criticism without trying to silence it through force or positively, Mrs. Deborah?
Yes, so important things to note, and I just want to add about the generational thing. It's very important to note we're not blaming anybody. We're not pointing the finger at anybody. We're not blaming anybody. We're taking ownership of who we are and who we want to be and taking actions to change it. So I just want to add that in. With regards to self criticism, I lived with this my whole life. I was constantly not believing in myself, putting myself down, always worried about what other people thought, filtering who I was being, what I was saying or not saying. I tended to clam up a lot because I didn't think I had anything good to say, or I didn't think I fit in the room. I didn't think I was good as anybody. I would look at people and decide that they were more educated, more rich, better speakers than me. So I would literally clam up. So I spent a good part of my life living in the shadows. And so it's with regards to the self criticism is the action verb of self doubt. So self doubt's the thing, the self criticism is the activity. It's all the same thing. There isn't 50 things wrong with us. In fact, there's nothing wrong with us. We don't need fixing, we need freedom. And we need freedom from that inner critic. I don't fix people, I help them find freedom. So self criticism is the action. So until you are going to do some work on that self image and the self doubt, you can't change the self criticism. I know that because I spent, 40 years trying to do that. And I did it, but it was exhausting and it didn't really work. I mean, it was a symptom and I kind of managed to put it in a box, like I said, but it didn't transform it. And I'm a transformational coach. I'm about us transforming at the very foundation so that we don't have that self doubt, that we believe and trust and love ourselves. And then, as you do that, as my client this morning so eloquently said, she doesn't have the narrative and the self criticism anymore like she does, because the more she steps into her power and who she truly is, the self criticism fades away. So I encourage people less focus on trying to dictate and control the self criticism, more emphasis on building your self image and your self love.
And I love what you said earlier. You only give freedom because at the end of the day, we are the ones that have the answer. The answer is always within us. You are just the one to be in the position to show them the way to get through that freedom that they want, for them to discover themselves. Because if we can work on ourselves, our self image, and who we really are, Those areas, when it comes to self doubt, self criticism, trust issues, and other things like that, usually fade away because we now know we are in a position whereby we see ourselves as more valuable. We can actually stay grounded, even despite if people are not comfortable with what you want to bring out. You realize that you feel that image and you actually value it um, stronger than actually doing a lot of things that can actually help them to also become more better as well. A lot of things and a lot of features also goes by it to make them more stronger and also to make them more professional. So we have to work on the self-image, which is very, very important as well. I would like to also drive to the point of confidence. We do know that when we work on our self-image, we should be able to deal with the self-criticism and self-doubt. But also, when we want to build confidence, it usually takes time. It is not something that comes very easily. It is a gradual process. So many people really delay action until they feel ready. They say, let me be patient, or let me wait till this time, or let me prepare for this or that before I can actually take this certain decision. So, what do you think are some of the practices that can help listeners build trust in themselves before confidence fully arrives, Mrs. Deborah?
Well, confidence is a result. It is not a prerequisite. What we need is courage. People don't need confidence, they need courage. They need courage to take the actions and do the things they need to do. Sometimes it's asking for help in order to be able to change or do the things that they feel scared. So, courage allows us to face our fears, and our fears are where our self criticism lives. It's a whole little dance that fear and self criticism all live together doing this little dance, stopping us. So it is courage that we need in small steps. It's funny because a lot of the people I coach, I will ask them if I've seen something, and I will say to them, do you want the feather or the hammer? My clients, do you want the feather or the hammer? And 99% of the time, they will say the hammer because they have courage and they want to change and they're willing to do what they want to do. So I'll give you an example. I had a client who runs her own business. She has a business partner. She was sending things to the business partner, but the business partner was taking days, sometimes weeks to reply. And so it was holding everything back. And so she was telling me this. And I said to her, well, why are you doing that? And she said, because I want to be courteous to my business partner. And so I said, do you want the feather or the hammer? And she said, I want the hammer. She said, I want the hammer. And so I said, it's not, you're not being courteous with your partner, you're being codependent. And that was just like, and she within a week had changed the way she was working with her partner. So it's, you know, having the courage now to go do the things that she needed to do in order to manage that self criticism.
I sincerely appreciate the insight. It shows that courage is very important in everything we do. For us to find confidence, we have to be courageous. Courage is one of the features that we have to build in. Now we can see that for us to get something in life, there is something we have to deal with. And if we can actually have the sense of courage, build our self image, we can actually rectify a lot of issues instead of facing the issue that we want to deal with. Why not check on the reflection? Why not check on the other side and see how those can heal others that we are actually having as at that moment? And also, Mrs. Deborah, we do know that there are a lot of people who also want to prove themselves despite the confidence, despite them not even having self doubt or also self criticism, they really want to prove themselves to others. They want people to know that they are actually good enough. They want people to know that they are actually doing something that is actually impactful enough. How do you think they can also begin embracing the truth that they are already worthy and capable without needing to prove themselves to others? Mrs. Deborah?
Well, you just described me for a good 40 years of my life. Everything I did, I had to prove myself to everybody because I didn't have any of my own self esteem. Everything I did was to please other people, be liked, feel like I belonged, get job accolades, get job performance, get high grades in school. All of that was to try to assemble some form of a false sense of self esteem. And it kind of worked, but not really, because if anything happens that is not that, you get a poor job performance review, you don't get invited to the party, you're not invited to the business meeting, your self esteem hits the floor. So we're giving all of our power away to outside things that we have literally no control over most of the time. So I lived like that a good 40 years of my life. And it all comes back to, again, less about trying to change those outside circumstances, more about changing our internal system. So by the time I was let go from my corporate job, thankfully, I had done a lot of this work because through my corporate career, getting fired was one of my biggest fears. It motivated everything. I lived in a fear of that. Despite doing really well, I still had that inner critic and that massive fear of being fired. And I can tell you from doing all of the things that you described, none of those changed anything. What changed was when I started doing my inside work, looking at who I was being and finding ways to build self esteem, getting help. I've always had a coach. I will always have a coach. I don't think you'd ever go to a coach who doesn't have a coach because as human beings, it's one of our things. A, we need each other, whether we like it or not. B, you can't do deep transformational work by yourself. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and ask someone else for help. There's that category that I coach in, which is called I don't know what I don't know. And that category of I don't know what I don't know is where the inner critic lives, is where the self doubt lives, and is where all the saboteurs live. And we cannot see it ourselves. We have to have another human being help us see it and be willing. And that's why coaching is such a great thing. I love it, is because we're not concerned whether you like us or not. We're concerned in telling you the truth that probably no one else in your life will ever say to you. Your friends can love and hug you. And again, we're kind and all those things, but our job is to tell you the bold truths. And like I said, my clients, when I give them the feather, meaning a soft approach, or the hammer, they always pick the hammer. Every time they're like, that's why I as I knew you would give me the hammer. I knew you would tell me the truth.
That is just the absolute truth. In this life that we find ourselves, we should try our best to see who we can also relent and also trust in some kind of situations in life. And also from the issue that we find in life, despite the ups and downs, we do not need to prove ourselves. As you said earlier, in the last 40 years, you've actually had a lot of experience regarding those perspectives because we get to a position whereby we get into a community or a society whereby we do not even have control over, and we do not want to get to that certain point in life. We should try our best to know how we can be capable to do things right, and also, most especially, get people that can actually tell us the truth. As you've said earlier, a coach, someone who is definitely coaching us or actually being there for us, we always tell us the truth. A friend won't do that. A lot of this kind of people will not be in the position, but when we have people who will always see us through and always be there for us. They will always tell us what we do not see. They will always see what we are actually lacking to see. And from there, we can actually build a fulfilled life that will help every single one of us to also thrive as well. Mrs. Deborah, there is also a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Mrs. Deborah. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing will be, Mrs. Deborah?
Well, I do a lot of studying of the mental scientists from the 1800s. So Thomas Troward, Dale Carnegie, all of these greats. We knew what I'm telling you today back way back then. As my yoga teacher so humbly said to me, he's like, Deb, we've known this for thousands of years. So it would be that. It would be to bring back that intelligence and insight and grace that those people had, the understanding that they had about who human beings are, why we're here, what our purpose is, to be more focused on serving than getting. And the more people in this world that we can have rise up in this world, the better off the world's going to be. My coach has a great saying. She says, when the water rises, all the boats rise. So if, many of us become part of raising up that water, then it can't help but raise up, the positive energy and insight. Everybody is capable of learning what I coach. Every single human being. All you have to do is have the desire to do it. And I don't say want. You can't need to do it. You can't have to do it. You have to want to do it. It has to be a heartfelt desire.
It's always come back to us. It is always our decision. And most importantly, it is always when we are ready. And despite the ups and downs, we should be ready to actually embrace and also do the right thing and also get the sense of guidance that will help us to grow in life. And also, Mrs. Deborah, I want to use this opportunity to thank you for the time, the great work you've done, and also your book, Me, My Thoughts, and I, that you brought out to actually impact and also make people see some part in the life they've come today. Thank you so much, Mrs. Deborah.
It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, and thank you for what you're doing in the world to help raise the water up by talking to different people and sharing what you do here on your podcast. So it's been a real pleasure to meet you. And like I said, thank you for your service in the world.
All right. Have a wonderful day, Mrs. Deborah. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.